Good evening, I'm Zaragana. Welcome to my studio. And we can get on with this. And I've put it on my easel and I've been playing with the light and the camera and you can see things on it now. So you can see things in the window. And you can see the three-dimensionality of it, which I'm rather pleased about. So, with cup of tea in hand, I've got to change my glasses and I've got to heat up the tool, but that's only 10 seconds, so I'm in no particular hurry to switch the tool on. Nice cup of tea. Mic's live. Yes, the mic's live. I've got a green light. Right, switch glasses and I can see the detail better. Okay, so what am I doing? Heating this tool up. What am I doing? Looking at that window frame on the back. Yeah, so that tool's hot by now. So, I like colouring. Just across the edge. Which should be subtle enough to make it look three-dimensional, so we'll stick with that. Now then, the door. Largely speaking, a lot of this door is white. So, let me switch tools, I think. So I'm going to swap out this, my other tool that's on this machine. I'm going to swap it out for the knife blade. And we're going to keep the temperature down on this one. Maybe not down that, well, else if I switch it over to this, I'm going to say maybe not down that much, but okay, we're getting some heat there. Not a lot, which is what I was kind of after. So, maybe I want a bit more than that. Yeah, a bit more than that, I think. I don't often work with this knife tool, so I'm not actually all that familiar with the sorts of level of heat that I need to set. But I need to set more than that. Okay. We'll wind it up slowly. I'm not going to touch this, but okay. It looks like I've got a bad lead. Maybe a bit of glue that's been put on. Yeah, this lead is dodgy. Definitely dodgy. Yeah. Right, well, I can't use that lead, so we will swap out the lead. In fact, we'll pull that lead off altogether. Looks like I'll need to re-terminate it possibly, but I can't use that one, which means I've got to use the lead off the other tool, which is fine. I'm now effectively operating as a single tool machine, which may. So we'll turn that heat back down again because the tool wasn't heating. Yep, I thought that might be the case. That's even warmer than I want it to be. What I'm going to be doing now is putting planks on the door. The door's made up of planks. And we're going to stop the door across, well, roughly across there. Okay. Yeah then. So I want this to be very slightly off. Straight. Although we've got a perspective drawing here, vertical lines are straight. At least in 2-point perspective, which is what we're doing here. Well, technically we are using a three-point perspective, but there isn't much in the 3rd point because we're roughly level. So our perspective is the where how many vanishing points you've got. So 1 point, 2 point and 3 points. So 1 point, 2 points and 3 points, or sometimes it comes down depending on which way whether you're looking up or looking down. Because we're looking more or less straight on, more or less, we were effectively working with 2 point perspective. Right, what I'm going to do is also come down here now. In a minute, what I'm going to do is turn this heat up. I mean, I'm working virtually there with the heat setting as number 1 on this pen, and it was just on the verge of being a bit too hot. Now I can adjust that down a little bit, but since most of my pens require well, at least 3 or 4 heat, then I suppose I could adjust it down, because then 10 just comes a bit cool. I don't use 10 very often, so now this pen is cutting into the wood a bit, but actually I'm not bothered. Oh, not bothered because it's a hole. Being a hole, it's dark. Now then, what I need to do is come back down to heat 1. Let the tip cool off a little. And then I'm going to put the edge of the door frame in. Lighter than that please, so we'll go all the way down. I want the door be. The door across the bottom is just literally going to be across the bottom. So I've got enough of this is real cool. So whilst it's real cool, what we can do is just run Just a few marks on the door like that, and then swap out that tool. I'll put that in the holder even though I haven't got no wire on it, because I need to put it back into this one. We'll run this up to, we'll come up to 5, because what I want to do is put an edge under the door, which is quite awkward actually with the easel. Yeah. Okay, and now we'll just cook under there a little bit. Because I don't quite know what the ground treatment is going to be. So we'll just do it like that. So we've bottom edged the door, and what I'll now do is cool this tool down, and we'll start shading stuff. Well, more or less most of this around the door here. That's the door frame. That's the door frame, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay, let's go all the way down there. And then we're going to just add patches. Now, what I could do with this is apply pyrography and scratch it off. I mean, it's kind of like how it looks on the door, sort of scratched, or well, scratched off really. But I'm not sure it would look quite as good if I tried that with pyrography. So most of the paint's gone around here, and we're getting patches up here of missing paint. What we're going to do now is just work up our way up in heat a little bit. I'm kind of dancing around a little because I don't want hard edges, I want a soft edge. So this, it's like so paintwork's coming off of the door, it's dropping off, it's being rubbed off, scratched off. So we kind of just want something that's kind of soft and patchy. Is there any particular? No, well, it's not particularly bowed or anything. Probably do with a little bit more heat on this tool. We'll just keep turning it up a little bit until we're comfortable with what it's at. And the bottom edge of this door to you guys should start to look a little bit sort of dirty. And that's basically bare wood. Now, although I am dancing around, I am trying to that's the operative word, because I'm not necessarily succeeding, but trying to keep the tool working in a sort of a horizontal direction. Because the way the paint's come off kind of makes it look like it's been scratched a lot. It hasn't, but it just makes it kind of looks like it has. That's working quite well. Let's try something else, which is just using the toe to put vertical lines on as like an overlay. Looking to do that just to give more of a scratch-like appearance here in the studio. I would stress it's not been scratched, it has sort of just fallen off as the paint, but it just appears scratch-like. And I'm just going to be doing this for quite a while actually. So essentially we've got odd areas up here, and we get more as we come down. So more or less around about here is where this particular stops. But then we got odd bits and pieces of scratching up there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour the top as well Um, let's work this with a touch more heat. Now, if I tried using a knife tool for this, I get it cutting into the wood too much for what I'm after, and it wouldn't look the same. Keep trying to be random about this. I don't want a pattern. I literally just want lots and lots of scratches. I can't actually see with these glasses on. Yeah, it's still a lot too light. Let's just apply a little bit of colour. And by a little bit of colour I mean a little bit of colour just to the door itself. And this just stops it being perfect white. Although the paint was brilliant white, I suspect it isn't now. And I now want a sort of a shadow across the top here. Again, it's a subtle sort of colour. You might just see it's slightly dirtier, but hopefully it starts to make the door look like it's present and looks a bit worn, worse for wear. Yes, it's got a white doorknob on it as well. I'm leaving the doorknob off, partly because I haven't left the negative space for it in the first place, which I should have done if I'd have wanted it on. Again, we'll just nudge the heat. I'm kind of looking for the ideal heat to do this. There is a heat at which I can I don't have to slow down too much, and yet I'll still be able to get the marks that I want. In actual fact, the other thing I ought to do is apply some colour here amongst these marks because they are pale. So I do need to keep going back over them. I mean, this is missing paint and we've just got bare wood. Now what happens if you slow down too much, if you tend to be too regular with the placement of lines when you're doing this sort of thing, and what that leads to is it leads to a regular look, and I don't want a regular look, I want it random. So I need to be able to do it fast enough so that I'm not picking where I put the blade, the tip down. And that's not strictly true, because I can aim that well, but it does mean that I can dot about a lot easier without having to slow down and do each individual stroke, because that would, as I say, would lead to placement. It'd lead to you placing individual strokes, and then it starts to look too structured. And if you think of long hair, for example, it's not structured, but it's sort of structured. You know, it's in long flowing lines, but where the light and dark patches are, you know, this little tiny furrows and things, is purely random. And that's kind of, if you were trying to do that, if you were to place each line, you'd start, you know, going over ones and not particularly coming up with what would be essentially a random pattern. You slow down too much, so I do want this kind of hot enough to be able to just get some lines without slowing down too much. I'm probably a little bit too slow here. I can work at this and I was going to say produce a random effect. Humans are not very good at random effects, but I can produce something which approximates it. I'm kind of also building up colour, but I am building up a textured colour because of all these lines. Even if you actually sort of manage to go directly over the top of one that's already on the wood, it's unlikely you'll keep doing that. So you will sort of show the underlying colours, and there's some lighter colours and some darker colours here, which will sort of show through. Sticking to using the toe of this, if you think of the edges of the tool as being sort of a rectangle, I'm using this bottom corner here. That's what I'm trying to do. And now you should be able to start to see on the display now the sort of missing paint. As I said, it's not being scratched off. It will start to look very much like that, but in actual fact, if I study the reference picture, it kind of looks very much like it's been scratched off. It's literally just weathering. That's done it. Wind and rain, which is why the bottom end of the door is more than the top door, because the roof causes the water sort of to skip the top half of the door. Okay. I may or may not go all the way up. I mean, it doesn't. A large proportion of this is white anyway, but I may not go any further on some of these. Again, I don't have to reproduce every single spot and drop and patch that there is to make it a personal picture. It's already a personal picture just from the point of view of it's a shed with this type of cladding on it, and you know, the roof is a little bit dilapidated and things, so it's kind of already there. Yes, quite nice. Now this one actually kind of looks a little bit odd just up there on its own like that. So we'll just put the odd sort of marking in there just to sort of, what's say, fill in the gap, but just to make it less stand outy. Now the way this looks, I could always use kind of like a pointillism type thing and just drop dots onto it as well, and that would probably work almost as well, because again it's kind of like little bits of flake that paints that have come off. Now I am just going to stand off camera for a moment. It's getting a little warm here in the studio, even though it's only 25 degrees. I think it's going to rain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a fan on. And we will turn this fan until it's blowing on me. No, that'll do. It's nice having a remote control. Now it will cool the pen a little bit, but my body will shield most of it. Now I'm getting small blobs occasionally, but as I just mentioned, it's almost like a flake of paint that's come off, so in this particular case it matters, but it doesn't matter that much, and it doesn't matter that much because I'm not using very high heat, so the blobs are quite close to the same colour as the rest of the strokes. Now having the dark under the door edge there does make coming off the edge a little bit easier, because you can just literally come off the edge, or in my case come onto the board from the edge, without worrying about it, because if you try it say over here, you'll tend to get darker marks than you really want, because you can't judge a perfect landing on the edge. So you tend to be either high, in which case you don't make contact, or you're low and then you have to lift the pen. Well, if you're low and lift the pen over the edge, you're not moving as fast as you would have been, and therefore you tend to get blobs. The dreaded blobs. Run for your life, there's blobs. Pretzel, have you gone to sleep? Or is it just so quiet I can't hear? It's so quiet I can't hear it. Okay, so what I've just done now is flip the tool over so that I'm using the just the edge. It's just an alternative way of doing it, of holding that, using that sharp corner that I mentioned earlier. Let's add a little bit more heat to this. Okay, adding some dark, really dark sort of edges, you know, the boards are sort of splitting a little bit and don't quite meet, which is what those lines there effectively are. Now that's weird. I've just had a feeling like I've missed something, but I missed something along the lines of I was supposed to buy something really good and I've forgotten or missed it or whatever. Got that sort of feeling whenever I've forgotten. That doesn't look too bad. Kind of looks a little bit artificial-ish because of that sort of stopping like that. Yeah, if we draw that like that, it will tend to make it look a different shape. Still sort of a line across, but kind of not as noticeable. I am now thinking about stuff up here. Too hot for what I'm thinking of. So I think we'll leave that like that. I'm wondering if this board wants some work on it. I think we might need something. Yeah, that should do it. We've got a very bit of shadow to that. I'm just thinking it's a bit white though, is this board still? It's kind of funny how this this pyrography here is quite plain. It sort of resembles a yellowy orange in terms of colour, which gradually turns to kind of a grey, and then will then sort of flip to sort of a browny colour. That's a bit better. We've knocked some of the whiteness off that. Right, so the next thing I kind of need to do is I need to put a board underneath here, and I'm kind of like continuing that line to there. Now I'm doing a line freehand here. You can use rulers, guidelines of course. If you want it incidentally to use a ruler to do this. Now you get a problem in a way if you want to use a ruler, because plastic ones would melt if you try to put the end of this against a plastic ruler. Metal ones would make the tip go cold, and thereby sort of negating the heat in the tool. Wood ones would effectively also do the same thing but turn brown. You'd be pyrographing them. So you're kind of stuck. Well, one of the tips you can have for doing that, or fixing that situation, is to use a glass ruler. Now it would be better to have a high temperature one made from something like Pyrex or pyrosilicate glass. But I don't actually know if they make rulers as such out of glass at all. So you just need a straight edge, so you know, a piece of glass really, glass edge of some kind. This tool probably isn't hot enough to worry the glass, so glass can be sensitive to heat. Borosilicate glass is less sensitive to heat, so what they call soft glass, if you heat it in an odd way, like too fast or all in one place, you can create stress and it will just fracture. Sometimes relatively explosively. Borosilicate glass won't do that because you're just not hot enough. But it may work with normal glass, because this is only a couple of 100 degrees and glass tends to get stressed. Around about sort of the 700 degree type of range. Though I'm not guaranteeing it, but you might find there's no problem at all. Just use a piece of glass and putting it on and running the tool down it to create lines nice and straight. Now you could design all sorts of things that clip onto this and run down the edge, but if you're not doing a parallel line to the edge, then you'd have a problem. I suppose you could clip a tool onto here which follows a ruler, which you can then lay down and the tool will follow the ruler, but it does seem like a lot of hard work. Now then, I've got... yeah, that'll do. Let's turn this up now because I want this dark-ish. I want it about that colour. And I've just realised how thick I want it to be. So I'm slow to transfer more heat, so I get this colour straight away. Sounds like a cat's walking on the roof, which incidentally is possible. There is a place actually just outside the window there where it is possible for a cat to actually jump up onto the roof of the studio here, and they do frequently wander around the house roof. You can hear them walking on the slates sometimes. Okay, so one of the things I want to do here is this board wants to be on top of this, so I've turned the heat up. We're now putting the rain shadow in. So rain shadow in this particular case kind of is what it sounds like. It's where the rain didn't go because it was shadowed by something, in this particular case the board above it. So these boards are covered, or were covered, in creosote, and over the time they have it has been sort of washed off with the weather. And that's kind of why these look sort of pale. The dark creosote has been washed off by water trickling down the boards, and then of course it misses the areas where they just underneath the lip of these pieces of wood, and I've just seen I've missed a shadow on there, the rain shadow on that piece of wood. So we'll go back in a minute and we'll add that one in as well, I think. Kind of odd because it looks like it's there, but it doesn't in person. So we'll just enhance that. Just making the whole of this last tiny bit of board here darker. It would have been in rain shadow, not that I can see it on the reference picture, but it would have been in rain shadow and in shadow, and therefore quite dark. So let me now turn the heat back up a little bit and go back in, reinforce this edge here, Now this is so that it looks the same here in the studio as it does on the camera. It may look like I'm not actually doing anything, but I am making quite a large difference here. I don't know if the camera's seeing a better contrast or something. Yeah, I'm not sure on camera that made much difference, but it made a big difference here. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I do want some dark areas under here. Now then, perhaps what I ought to do is look at this with a pencil. So if I'm going to have some sort of shadowing, so it's going to be sort of under there. So it's going to be really dark, coming lighter as we come out from there. Okay. Just to help me understand where I'm about to start and put some things. Now I also want a piece of wood across the front of here as well. Which is then part of the what was a relatively flimsy base. Now, did I kind of make a mistake with that? Kind of, but we'll deal with it. Okay. I've got a dark line there. That's probably incorrect. That's going to stop about there. Right, at this stage I'm not too bothered about that right hand edge, because I'm still not sure what's going to happen with that. We'll be looking at some grass at some point shortly. Not quite. Oh yeah, I've put that in a bit too dark originally. Never mind, we'll go with it. So this is just kind of like the edge of the subframe, so it's sort of hidden underneath slightly. I'm going to make it slightly darker than the just above it there. So it's in shadow. It may or may not have been creosoted, but we'll assume it's going to be darker. Making it darker will make it look further back, which is kind of a bit weird. Sometimes darker things look closer, other times they look further away. So if you're doing a landscape, darker things look closer. Distance is denoted by mistiness. The more misty and pale something is, the further it is away. When you're not working with that effect, then the reverse kind of occurs. So if we're not talking about sort of pale pastel type things, so like this shed for example, the darker stuff appears to be further away. It's the same with portraits as well. Something darker looks to be further away than something which is lighter. So by making this darker, I'm putting it underneath the place above. Right, I kind of really should be turning the tool heat up a little bit. Here I'm working a little bit too slow, but I don't have very much to do. And actually the next bit I want to be dark as well, so I could have turned the tool up. I was about to say I've only got this little bit to do, so turning the tool heat up means I'll just have to turn it down again. But in practice I do actually want it to be turned up a bit, because I'm going to do some stuff underneath there which is quite dark. Now the dark edge under the door is okay. It's under the door. It's kind of like a gap under the door. So it will be naturally darker than the area around it. Dark holes are dark. Not necessarily the darkest, but quite dark. That probably needs a little bit more colouring. Again, the sharp edge also helps to just reinforce the difference between the two boards. And I'll come back underneath there in a minute with some going quite darker still. Okay, that's the last of my tea. So let's go up to 7. You know, this razor tip only goes up to 10, doesn't go up to 11, so can't be as good as some others. Right, now then, again, dark, sharp edge. Now, the thing that can be a little bit awkward is the tool sort of grabbing into the grain of the wood and therefore wanting to go somewhere where you don't want it to. So although I'm going straight back along this shed, straight back is not straight to the piece of wood. It's at an angle. So I'm stood here with my head on one side. And the wood grain is quite parallel in this particular case. It keeps dragging the tool down here when I want it to go that way. So I started, yeah, so I'm going to get a really sort of thin sliver just there. And sometimes it coming to join in the middle can be a difficult thing to do. Sometimes it's better to start at one end and go all the way to the other rather than try and join in the middle, because it can be really difficult to get two things to line up perfectly like that. Now I would say that was coincidence, but it's partly practice. Now if you're watching this and you're seeing smoke coming off this, it kind of is, although I'm not burning anything. Smoke is really just stuff evaporating off the surface of wood when you burn it. And what's causing it to evaporate off is not the burning but the heat of the burning. And it doesn't need to be as hot as a flame to cause it, and that's what's happening here. We're kind of vaporizing the fluid contents of the wood. So some of that is locked into the cells or between the cells, and it's coming out. And we are heating it with a tool and basically boiling it. Which is kind of where the colour's coming from. We're boiling the same liquid, causing the colour to change. Some of it boils off. Now I'm aiming for about here, about halfway down that brick. I need to put some brick texture into that. So this is kind of deep shadow underneath the shed. And then get lighter shadow. But what I could do with doing is playing with some grass. First, that hasn't gone. So I've kind of got just the edge there. I've not gone all the way because I want to be just a little bit careful with the heat. I don't want to suddenly cook those bricks. They do need to be darker, they're the wrong colour, but I don't want to be forced into what colour they are by accidentally going over them with a hot tool. So going back over this, working slowly, getting a dark colour, almost if not actually the darkest colour on the board. Now I'll come back and turn the board and do the edge of that with the straight edge of the tool. I'm not as good using this tool sort of flat. I can use the toe easier to create a straight edge than the side. I haven't developed the skill enough. Now if you're bothered by the, if you were doing this or want to do this and you're bothered by the vapour that's coming off here, and strictly speaking I probably shouldn't be, you shouldn't really be breathing it. If nothing else, it's sort of full of tree stuff, sort of cooked tree stuff. You can get a fan obviously to blow it away. Sometimes though a really large fan on your desk can be, really large, as in sort of a 12-inch fan, can generate too much air flow, and for pyrography it can be enough airflow to keep the tip too cool for what you're after. One of the things you can get is things like USB fans. They're smaller fans, they don't generate as much airflow, and they you can sort of blow those across. They work better if you blow them sort of above the work rather than across the work, so a few inches off, so that you blow the air. It will tend to drag the smoke with it, so it will have the same effect. The other thing you can do is, if you happen to have an old computer fan around, sort of thing that used to be in the back of computers, just wire those up to 12 volts or 5 volts even, so like even a USB power supply, 5 volts, because the fan doesn't need to spin fast. It needs to move a little bit of air, but you don't necessarily want what would be a 12 volt computer fan. blasting air across the desk. But at 5 volts they're spinning slow enough to still generate the draft which blows that stuff away from your face and eyes, because it can make your eyes sting. What you can also do with a computer fan, because they're quite good at it, is you can turn it around and suck air. So you can put it closer to your work then, like just at the edge of the board, and it will suck air across. Now that doesn't cool the tip quite as much, it's not as powerful, but it will still get the vapour away from your face. Now if you're doing pyrography on any kind of manufactured board, plywood is kind of manufactured but isn't quite what I meant by that. If you things like using chipboard or any sort of fibre type board, so hardboard for example, which can be quite nice for practicing pyrography on, that's little sort of sawdust or small chips of wood that have been glued together with glue. Literally they've sort of been soaked in glue and pressed between rollers, which tends to dry out the glue, squeeze it out, dry it out, compress everything together, which is what actually makes the board. But when you apply pyrography you are heating the glue as well, so you do get some of the glue in the stuff coming off the board, and that's not necessarily a good thing to be breathing. Right, let's turn this round, and I want to come right up to the edge of that brick, nice and sharp, because the edge of a brick is sharp. Okay, now what I want to do is come down below that again still, but with less heat. So actually I'm going to turn it that way again. So we'll come down to about here. And hopefully what I'll do is I'll blend this into this. So we've kind of like got two-ish levels of shadow. I'll sort of make them less of a strong edge. Now this is triangular, so it comes to a point up there. So I'm not trying to keep the same distance, I've got to get smaller and smaller and smaller. That's one of those things to remember, because if you forget then you've got to fix your mistake. Yeah. So the ground isn't level, so I am going in a dead straight line, but that's pure coincidence more than anything else. But it happens to fit. Okay, so a bit more heat to help with this. So I'm making little sort of circular motions here. Kind of two reasons for doing that. One is it tends to fade. It still applies heat to this top area here, but what it and it sort of does it in a slightly more sort of fuzzy way. One of the things I've also found is it has a tendency to sort of seem to melt this area here and then spreads out the colour. That's the best way I've got of describing it, because the edge around here seems to get lighter as well, so it's not like it's just making this area dark. I am sort of transferring something from here out here. Now I'm happy with that occurring because it provides more of a transition. Okay, so now we've got what is less of a hard edge. Unfortunately, not sure you're seeing it as such, but it's less of a hard edge. It's a softer edge here as we come out from underneath the darkness of the shed. Right, so I'm going to do, I think, is do some block work on here. So we'll turn this down, cool it down by blowing on it, and put some bricks in. Now it's kind of weird. I can sort of see these bricks. Yeah, I didn't quite get them vertical. That's what I get for working with the board at an angle. Mind you, this wall was falling over. Okay, so a little bit of a hint of sort of some block work of some kind, which I've got not quite right, but it'll do. So what I want to do here as well now is to sort of just make sure that I don't have a white area there. Continue with this black to a sharp edge, which I'll need a little bit more heat for. So I'm trying to do this to get a sharp corner without cooking something you don't want cooked. Well, what I'm looking at there is that brick looks a little bit fat. So a little tiny detail really, but one that would bug me. Okay, well, the shed itself is kind of largely done there. Now, I do have the potential just to leave it like that, but I probably am not going to. It doesn't. There's nothing anchoring it. It's floating in midair. It's floating in midair with a shadow underneath it and a brick wall hanging from the bottom. We need to ground it. Even if I don't put anything around the background here, I do need to ground it. And the thing I want to try is some grass work. Now then, that potentially is lots of knife work. So effectively, lots of blades of grass. Now it would be quite nice to have grass green, and there's a couple of ways of doing it with a crayon, basically a coloured pencil, or with some green ink, which I've got. And we could do pyrography first and put the colour on over the top, or put colour on and do pyrography over the top, which will lock it in but change the colour a little bit. I don't know which one to do, and what I'm going to do is get a piece of hardboard and just practice the four methods, if you like, there of doing just that before I work on this board, because I don't want to ruin the rest of the work on the shed. But I'll do that on the next stream. We're now about 9:45, nearly 10 to, and getting out the stuff to do that will take us to the end of the stream anyway. So what we'll do is we'll leave it for the next stream. I'll get the stuff out, and then we can start on the next stream. Yeah, it is. Oh, okay. I was suddenly thinking, what day is it today? It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday here in the UK. So the next stream will be on Friday. And on Friday we will be looking at grass. So I've got to get down here and around the back here somewhere grass. Whether I put anything behind it at the moment, I don't know. That would be kind of trees. Trees are also green, but whether or not I use green or we just sort of do leafy sorts of shapes, maybe we'll have a practice with that on the hardboard as well, and see how that goes, just to sort of put something in the background. But I could just do the grass and leave the top as it is. But I think yes, we'll leave it at that for this evening. Next stream, as I mentioned, will be on Friday. That's day after tomorrow, surprisingly, given that today is Wednesday. The stream will start at approximately 7 PM UK time. That's 1800 hours GMT. We'll go on for a couple of hours till about 9 PM, or as things dictate. I'll start as soon as I can. After 7 PM, occasionally we'll start late, but bear with me if that happens. It's because I've been late getting back from work and I need to make an evening meal and have something to eat before I start the stream. If I don't, then I kind of end up stopping streams early because I'm hungry and I want something to eat. So I'm more likely to go on later than I am to go on till the end if I have some, and you know what I mean. If I eat first, it's better all round. So if you want to see some more of this Friday, if you want to see some of the earlier parts of this, starting from just the plain sort of sketch on the board, last couple of episodes I think are available here on Twitch. Before that, those are no longer available on Twitch, but they are available on YouTube, youtube.com/SarraganArt, where you can see the whole of the broadcasts with this particular shed, and indeed just about every other broadcast that I've made, together with one or two other things, all put into series, a number of series, so you can follow them through. But they are in real time. They are recordings of the stream, so bearing that in mind. Although these things do take some time to do, but when I'm streaming, I'm about 30% slower than I would be if I wasn't streaming. So they do take some time. That window doesn't look quite right. I might work on that afterwards. This one, just some of the markings aren't quite right. So if you'd like to be notified, then follow me here on Twitch, and or you can follow me on Twitter. I do tweet when I go live. Don't tweet a great deal, so if you want to follow me on there, I am at SarraganArt, twitter.com/SarraganArt, of course. And finally, since I'm talking about all the adverts, Facebook at SarraganArt, facebook.com/SarraganArt, and also the Etsy shop where there is jewellery type things for sale, and that's the other way around, SarraganArt.etsy.com. But you get the gist here. It's SarraganArt everywhere. So with that, thank you for watching. Hope I will see you on the next stream, which will be Friday, 7 PM UK. Bye for now.